Hey, it's a huge honor today to be out here with an idol of mine. I've no, really. I mean, you were one of the first guys that were doing CBCT 3Ds, posting cases on your Endo blog and from www.theendoblog.com, and and you're an endodontist at superendo.com. But I remember the first time that I ever put together that a CBCT and a root canal was you, the Endo blog, and then I have always leaned on you. Post these on Dental Town, and I got you to post another one of your
I
cases.
always appreciate the reminder.
Yeah, and you're just an amazing man. This is the third. So your endodontic practice has three endodontists,
3 full-time endodontists.
and so you're the caboose. We're out here for the third time.
That's right.
And it really is an honor that you.
Well, I'm glad you
found-
came, and
found
we
an hour.
enjoyed having you come speak at our seminar.
Oh my God, that was
time.
so fun. But so let me read your bio. You grew up in Indiana, which means you're a Hoosier.
That's right.
Moved to Salt Lake City as a senior in high school. So what made your family move to Salt Lake? Was it
Just
a
transferred my dad's job.
dad's job?
So we packed it up and headed west.
And you went to BYU, served a mission in California speaking Spanish. I always was. And Spanish was the only D I ever made in my entire life. And I can still remember San Martin telling my mother that I was linguistically retarded. And I thought he was true because the happiest day of my life was the day my mom said I no longer had to take piano lessons because the piano teacher was screaming at my mom that how he couldn't carry a tune in a lunch pail.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I can't hear these foreign words and I can't hear music. Went to dental school at West Virginia University, graduated in 99.
Did you know that they beat ASU this last week?
Oh, did they?
Yeah,
In
the bowl
football?
game, in the football game, yeah. So.
Right on.
Go Mountaineers.
Go Mountaineers.
Yeah.
And that's different. That's the main difference between us is you like college football and I like the NFL. Go Cardinals. Go Cardinals. They're going to go all the way this year. Then you did an AEGD at West Virginia in 2002. 14 years ago, an endo residency at WVU, moved to Arizona where your wife grew up because you want to be closer to your mother-in-law.
That's
And
right.
How did that work out?
It's worked out great. Yeah, it's worked out great.
And you're only saying that because it's being recorded and your mother-in-law can find this on
She
YouTube.
might listen. Yeah.
And then you joined Ed Carlson, who is just one of the most amazing endodontists I've ever met. I mean, he really is. We have tried. You guys have tried to be leaders in the endodontic education for those in East Valley. You put on the Inner Space seminars. And what is the Inner Space? Where does that name come from?
You know, we're always trying to come up with a fun name. I think Ed came up with that one. Root canals referring to the inner space of the tooth, right? So we thought that'd be a fun name. But about 13 years ago, we thought that would be a great way for us to share our clinical experience. And so it's really turned into a great group of people that come, and we have anywhere from 60 to 80 dentists. And
There was 100 when you had me,
yeah.
I think. There was standing
You're
room
a
only.
big draw.
I'm a big draw?
So,
no, I'm just a
and,
big guy. Well, I want to ask you one politically incorrect question. It's funny. Why is it that an endodontist will have a seminar and share everything you know? An oral surgeon will help you. Hell, you can break off the top half of the tooth, send it to an oral surgeon, he'll pull out the bottom half, and then try to give you, some tips. I remember back in '87, the oral surgeon called me and said, "Howie, with the flap you had, I couldn't pull it out, dude. If you can't see it, you're not going to pull it. Make a bigger flap." Periodontist, same way. I mean, you can call any periodontist down and say, "Can I, that implant I referred to you? Can I come watch you do it?" Hell yeah! All the 9 specialties are that way, but there's not an orthodontist in this town that would have a study club to show you how they do ortho. Have you ever noticed that? Why do all the other professions say, here's their thinking? The oral surgeon's like, well, hell yeah, you should pull all the teeth you can, because I know you're not going to be able to pull the wisdom teeth and impact it and whatever. Endodontist, well, you assume the general dentist is going to do the canine or the number 8. And you'll show him how to do that because you figure he's probably not going to retreat a distal second molar. Yeah. Well, why do you share, and why do you think orthodontists don't?
I don't know. I can't speak for the orthodontist, but our philosophy has always been we know that the majority of root canals are still done by general dentists. So we're trying to develop a partnership with people, with the dentists that we work with. So We want them to do the root canals that they're comfortable doing and the ones that are profitable for them. I mean, frankly, if you start a molar and if you take 2 hours and then you break an instrument off and then you have to bring them back for another 2 hours and then you end up having to refer them out, you've lost a lot of time, you've lost a lot of money. So we've tried to teach people, look, do the best endodontics possible, and we'll help you to do that. But we want you to be comfortable with doing it, and we want you to know that we're here to help for the ones that you don't like to do. I mean,
And
it's really about partnership. And the best referring relationships that we have are offices where we truly feel like we have a partnership. We don't feel like we're getting dumped on, like, they're throwing all the mess ups over our way, but they learn how to make good referrals. And we in return, we learn how to tee up those patients so when they go back, they're ready for restorative. And the
Tee sounds like you're a golfer.
Well, not really.
But you just knew all your listeners were.
The dentists appreciate when they come back and the patient says, "Hey, I need a crown." Dr. Hales said, "I've got to get back in and get this crown done." And so we really try to build partnerships, and those are the most rewarding relationships as well, when we have partnerships with the general dentist. And so providing information and helping them to do the best endodontics has always been our goal.
And the most important thing you can do also, I always thought with specialists, is whenever I set a wisdom teeth to the oral surgeon, mm-hmm. I always set the treatment plan and told the oral surgeon, it means it's very important to me to get a third person endorsement for the oral surgeon to say, by the way, dude, I noticed you have 8 other cavities. You need to get back in there and get those filled. Or those 8 cavities might turn into 8 root canals. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have the money for 8 root canals, I'm going to be pulling 8 more teeth on you.
Yep.
And it's so great when an endodontist, it's so smart when you get your specialist office manager and your office manager to be faxing and emailing the treatment plans. And I know what dentists are going to say. They're going to say, well, is that HIPAA compliant? I mean, if you would spend your whole life worrying about an invisible OSHA man and HIPAA man that no one's ever seen, go ruin burn your office down tonight. But it is very important. Yeah. I want to ask you about that comment you made as specialist. I know pediatric dentists tell me that they don't even like referrals from dentists because they always send them this kid who they try to do something. They already scared him. They already hurt him. Mm-hmm. They already made him cry. He's already unmanageable. They like to go after pediatricians and get that kid, 6 months, a year old, with their first visit as a fun pediatric dental office, and they want to start. They concentrate everything on pediatricians. When you're an endodontist, does that one guy who does almost all of his endos and only sends you a broken file, a retreat, and things like that, in your heart, is that account more a pain in the ass, or do you look at it as just a 5-alarm fire and firemen like 5-alarm fires?
Of course it is.
Of course it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, I mean, when there's no working relationship, it's hard to, and if you're busy enough that you don't have time, to spend, what people don't realize is if a file's broken in a tooth, it can take anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour to get that out, right? So, like most of us, the overhead of the procedure, if we have to double the time of the procedure, then the profit goes almost to nothing.
But do you double the fee on that?
No.
You can't do that?
Well, there's a file removal fee, and we don't typically, the doctors that we work with routinely, we don't nickel and dime on those type of fees. If there's a perforation repair, if there's a file removal on doctors that we have a good working relationship, no. I mean, because what does that do? That inflames the patient when they walk out the door. Right now they're really upset because they had to pay extra for a file removal. The dentist started it, couldn't finish it. Now it costs more to go have it taken out. So, we try to make sure that the patients, when they come to us, they have a great experience, and then they go back feeling confident in the dentist that they've seen. And frankly, it's easier for us to help patients that way when we have that working relationship. So we're glad to help anybody at any time. And there are times when we've had to sit down with certain doctors and say, hey, we're noticing you're getting a lot of file separations, and try to help their technique. I mean, we've done that We've done that before, and give them some tips.
Thanks for not mentioning my name on the podcast.
But like I said, we're all about helping and building teamwork between generalists and our specialty.
Well, follow up that. That's a Socrates said we only had two emotions: fear and greed. And I think in a molar endo, the number one fear is, the file's going to break.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit? What which file is mostly breaking? Would it be the small little 15 or 20, or is it the big 35 or 40?
Well, I think that's all dependent on your technique and the files that you use. You can break any file depending on the anatomy and the force that you put on it. But one of the things that I've really enjoyed with the cone beam is that when you have that type of a complicated treatment, the cone beam gives you so much more information to be able to manage that complication. For example,
broken file.
Exactly. So a broken file separates, let's say it's halfway down the distal root on a lower molar, second molar, right? And now you're trying to decide, all right, am I going to remove more tooth structure getting this file out? Or can I get around it and seal it off with the second distal canal? So we take a cone beam. We can then look at the root anatomy and see that, the two canals come down and join. We can tell that by sealing the other canal off, we will essentially seal the file in, right? That's different than if that root has a separate apex. So
I never even thought of that.
Oh, it's fabulous. In fact, then you explain to patients, look, we were unable to get the file out. I mean, if it's down around the curve, we can't get to it without destroying the root. So, but then you feel confident in telling the patient, but don't worry because we've actually sealed it in and made it part of the filling. We got around it and we sealed it in. And so on a case like that, a patient walks out the door perhaps with a file sealed into the tooth, but we still feel real confident in the treatment that we provided because we know the anatomy and we've addressed it. So that's just one of the little ways that the cone beam, has affected the day-to-day practice in endodontics. I mean, I can't imagine practicing without the cone beam now.
And some of those cases on the endoblog.com, some of those cases, I mean, when did you start that? How many years ago was that?
I think it was in 2007.
2007, this is 2016, so it's coming up on 10 years ago. I mean, I seriously think the first time I ever saw a CBCT and an endo and put the two together, I'm kind of like chocolate on my peanut butter, and you got peanut butter on my chocolate. Was you a decade ago?
Really?
I mean, how many cases do you have on that?
Oh, I think I have about 250 posts maybe, and I was looking at it the other day. I think I've had over 1 million visitors.
Yeah, you're a legend.
Over the course of that time.
You are a legend. And a lot of my friends, Tom Giacobbe, Tom Mattern, Tim Taylor, Bob Savage, a lot of my friends talk about those cases on there.
What we were, originally I thought.
And by the way, all 5 of those people are alcoholics, by the way, just if you're curious.
The original thought was if I'm going to take the time to share a case, why not put it somewhere where I can get to it again someday when I need it? And that's why I did it in a blog format rather than a newsletter that goes out and then people throw it away.
Oh, you mean digital instead of print?
Yeah. So and now I'll routinely be talking to a patient. I'll say, hey, we're talking about this type of a case. Well, I'll just whip over and pull up the blog and say, here's a few examples of this type of treatment.
To patients?
Yeah. I'll use it.
Speaking of patients,
for patient education.
You and your brother started a patient thing, gradeyourdentist.com.
We did.
What tell them about that and how the heck did you go from root canal to gradeyourdentist.com?
I am kind of an idea guy. I love to come up with kind of new ideas. And so about a year ago, I started working on how do I get patients to give us reviews? And I think it started because we had like 3 reviews on Yelp. And one of them was kind of a negative review. It wasn't that negative. The patient was complaining that the doctor was switched on him.
I don't mean to interrupt you. Last month, this lady walked in without an appointment. We spent 2 hours with her, explain everything, talking to her to explain everything and all this kind of stuff, and then verified her insurance and all this stuff, and then she was mad that she'd have a co-payment, this and that, and that she'd have to give us money and all. And after 2 hours, she finally just said, well, if you're not going to do this for insurance only, I'm going to leave. And I said, well, we can't do that. Long story. Yeah. And then she goes out and writes us. Then she just ripped me a new one on Yelp.
Yeah.
So I mean, and the whole team agreed that, I mean, with these online reviews, the planet is filled with batshit crazy people, and they got a smartphone. So,
Yeah, and you know,
but you know what? Another friend told me, a very SEO certified guy said that if someone goes to your reviews and it's like 5 reviews, and they all say, "Oh, this is best guy since sliced bread," that's less believable than if like 10% of them are bad, because when they start seeing a bad, because most consumers know that. You only have to look at your family reunion to realize there's other crazy people living on the planet. So, but anyway, sorry
yeah,
to
that's
interrupt.
true. I mean, you can take a bad review and turn it into a positive experience based on the way that you respond. But essentially, I started
Explain
trying to.
that.
Well, for example, if a patient goes on Yelp and blasts you, you as a business owner can respond to their complaint. Now, there's some,
I did not know that.
yeah, you can go and you can respond. You can invite them to come in. You can invite them, and while you can't share patient information, online, you can certainly show other people who are reading the reviews that as a business owner, you're responsive, you're listening, and you're willing to work out any issues. And that can then take a negative review and turn it online. So and the people who are reading reviews, they can tell when there's somebody that's crazy. I mean, they can read the review and see the sincerity.
Is that because the last name is Irish? Or?
Well, perhaps. No. So we basically tried to start driving some reviews to Yelp, and realized that all of the reviews that went to Yelp, they'd get buried in their system. So so over the course of the last year, I've been trying different things to get patients to write reviews for us, and then finally, my brother and I found a product that we developed, Joel, and it's called GradeYourDentist.com. And what it does is it gives you a single URL website that you can give to your patient, and your patient, you can text it to them, you can email it to them. They click on that, and it will guide them through the process of leaving an online review. But as the dentist, it allows you to choose the sites that you want them to go to. So you could give them the choices of Yelp, Facebook, Google, and Health Grades. And then when you get enough Facebook reviews and you want to drive more, you could take Facebook off and you could add Vitals or Dr. Oogle or whatever third-party review site. But what I've found for our
So
practice,
we're looking at it right here. So,
I think we pull it up here.
Brian, can you zoom in on this a little bit?
So here's an example. So
Oh no, go back. I wanted the blood and guts. That was awesome.
So here's an example of our practice. So a patient, we give them this link, and I sometimes will just text it to them right from my phone. They go in and they pick out which doctor they saw that day.
So was he? Was that short, fat, bald guy Ed? Was he a Calvin Klein model before?
He was a hand model.
He was a hand model.
Yeah. So then the patient then has a chance to tell a kind of experience they had, and this is a filter where if they had a good experience, they select. If they had a bad experience, it invites them to email you directly. So it's not encouraging them to go online and complain.
So a good experience would go to
exactly.
Yelp,
So-
and a bad experience would be emailed to you.
When they go to a good experience, it goes to any one of these websites.
Google, Yelp, Health Grades, Vitals. Okay, I think.
And you as the doctor get to pick which ones are up here.
Okay, and first just talk about Google Plus. With that, what percent of reviews is Google Plus? Is it like 80-20? Is it like 80%?
The Google's the big dog. You're right. So they're the most important. I looking at the statistics, most people who do reviews are going to Google, either using it on their laptop, their PC or their handheld device now. But Yelp is probably the second most.
And then
used.
what's Health Grades and Vitals?
Those are just other review business sites. So there's hundreds of them actually.
Yeah. But you'd want to
Yellow
focus
Pages
most
have one. Dr. Oogle. There's just tons of them. So you pick the ones that you want to focus on. But look at this. When you click on Yelp, then it's going to give the patient a few instructions, and then it's going to take them directly to that Yelp page. So they don't have to go search you out on Yelp. It drops them right in the place where they need to leave the review. So what I've found since we started doing this, you see now we've got 18 reviews on Yelp that have stuck.
Since you've been doing this, you've got 18 reviews?
Well, I had about 3 or 4 good ones. And then since we started this process, what I found is that Yelp does not like people. Yelp doesn't want anybody to go to Yelp doesn't want you as a business owner to ask for a referral from Yelp, a review on Yelp. They want their Yelpers to spontaneously go to Yelp and review. So when you do it this way, it gives the patients who are more likely to use Yelp that choice. And so what I found is that it's really successful at getting those reviews to stick. So it's just been a kind of a neat product. And I was just pulled up a report. Our practice, I think, generated about 20 reviews in the last 2 months that have been on Yelp, Google, Health Grades, and Yellow Pages. So,
Well, I just texted the link to my whole team and you.
right on.
So is this how much does something like this cost?
Well,
What's your business model?
we're just getting it rolling. So it's $299 for a year
$299
per doctor, or you can do $30 a month if you want to go month by month.
Nice.
But you look at the value of an online review. I mean, it's pretty significant. I think Inscriptions, our Arizona magazine, there was an article that said, and I'm not sure if I believe this, it said an online review can be worth up to $500. Now, I don't know how they would calculate that, but the reality of it is when somebody goes online and says something good about your practice, it stays there forever. And it affects the search engine. So when people are Googling and searching, it's going to affect the search engines. So it's a very inexpensive way to do search engine optimization. I mean, I hear some guys are out there, they're paying $1,200 a month to a company to do search engine optimization and bring them up on the Google searches. But, this is something that will last forever. So once it's written down there, it's there for a long time.
Nice, buddy.
So it's
so this was your idea, and then what's your brother's background?
Well, my brother's a developer, so he does web design.
So he's a web design.
Yeah.
Is he a programmer?
He's done some programming. Yeah, he worked with a hospital company that had a software program.
Well, good luck. So is this been fun for you?
Yeah, I know I'm never going to make any money doing this kind of stuff. I enjoy root canals, and that's where I want to spend my time. But it's been a lot of fun working with my brother. We have had a project to do together, and I expect
my best friend is
him
my
to be
brother.
Full time.
Yeah, my best friend is mine. Well, when next time he comes down here, have him come by Dentaltown.
Okay.
Yeah. I've been trying to get my brother to work with me forever, but he moved from Kansas City to Sydney, Australia. So I think it's
Well, I tried to get my brothers to move down to Arizona too. I was able to get one brother to move to Arizona, and I have two other brothers that stayed in Utah. So this is the next best thing. Work on a project with them if I can't get them.
You said you'd like to do endo. I'm just curious. What percent of dentists do you think like endo? And the follow-up question is, what percent of the dentists out here don't do endo or molars? Or have you ever seen any data on what percent of America's 125,000?
No, off the top of my head, I the statistic that comes to my mind is that 75 to 80% of endo is still done by general dentists nationwide.
Yeah.
So. But I couldn't give you.
And then every dentist I meet, I always ask them, what percent of your root canals fail? I mean, you've been practicing 10 years, and they always say the same thing. Knock on wood, I haven't had one yet.
Oh yeah, that's.
And then I'm like, okay, well, there's 4,000 endodontists in the United States, and 4,000 endodontists. So every time they do a retreat, it has to be an immigrant from another country.
Yeah.
So I was wondering.
Geographical success. Those are the ones that move. Yeah, move all the time.
So tell these guys what percent of the 4,000 endodontists work is retreating a failed root canal, and how many of these things fail?
I bet in my practice, I do 25% are retreats, 25 to 35%.
And what do you think the success rate is of endo done in America today?
I still think it's very high. I mean, the reality is most of the statistical numbers that we have about success of endodontics or implants for that matter, they're all affected by the quality of the study. I mean, the reality is the research in dentistry, the quality of the studies has been fairly poor for a long time.
And the podcast we released this morning was Carl Misch, and Carl Misch is published as much as anybody, and he said that on all these peer-reviewed journals, he says no one's ever asked for the data.
Yeah.
He has three examples in implantology where someone submitted the data and has never even done the surgery.
Yeah.
One guy went on a sabbatical, and at the end of a year of not practicing dentistry, he came out as an implant expert and starts lecturing on implants. So it reminds me of the joke that 93.8% of all statistics are made up.
Yeah, that might be right.
Hey, you just gave a lecture on cracked teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, we had a nice big group of dentists, and we talked about cracked teeth, and our goal in that presentation was to help make sure that the specialists and the generalists were using the same terminology. When you talk about a crack or a fracture, we kind of use those terms interchangeably, and sometimes they're confusing. They can be confusing to each other. They can be confusing to the patient. There's 5 types of cracks.
There's 5 types of cracks.
There's 5 types of cracks.
How did I make it to 53 and not know there were?
See, so that's
5?
why we talked about
Did you
the 5
name
types.
one crack after each one of your daughters? You have 5 children?
I do have 5.
Are they all daughters?
No, one boy.
One boy?
Yeah.
So,
the first would be a craze line. Everybody has craze lines. That's a crack. It's a crack in the surface of the
how do
enamel.
you spell crazed?
C-R-A-Z, craze.
Crazed lines?
A craze line.
That's an official type of...
A craze line.
And this is the 5 types of what?
This types of cracks. This comes
5
from, this is
types
an
of crack.
AAE publication.
Huh, 5 types.
Okay. So you've got a craze line, and we all know that that's not a big deal. I mean, all adults, if you look closely enough, certainly if you look under a microscope, you'll see craze lines, little cracks in the surface of the enamel. No problem, and there's no treatment needed at this point. The next type is when the crack goes a little bit deeper through the enamel into the dentin, right? And that's when we begin to call it a crack, and those types of cracks, again, are the early signs of stress. They don't necessarily mean that the tooth has to have a root canal or to come out, but you need to recognize that those are early signs of fractures or early signs of change in the tooth caused by cyclic flexing of the tooth. So if we can recognize those and treat those earlier, then we'll prevent them from going bigger and deeper and jeopardizing the tooth. So we talked about cracked tooth syndrome and how to diagnose those cracks. So then you have, let's see.
Number 3.
Number 3 is a fractured cusp. Okay, that's when the patient comes in and says, "Doc, I broke my tooth. It doesn't hurt, but a whole half of it broke off." Okay, and those fracture usually down to the bone line. Those are treatable, but they oftentimes need a root canal in order for restorative reasons. So you have a fractured cusp. Then you have a split tooth. And that's a crack on steroids. Okay, that's a small crack.
And by the way, I am not on steroids. Everybody accuses me.
I've seen you in the gym.
Of taking steroids. This is all natural.
I know you're an Iron Man.
This is all natural.
Yeah.
Split tooth.
A split tooth.
That's a fractured.
That is a crack that started coronally, right, in the surface of the crown, and went apically. And when it gets down below the CEJ and down into the root, then we call it a split tooth. Essentially, the tooth is breaking apart. At that point, it's no longer treatable. It's too late.
So the split tooth is something that goes below the bone.
Below the bone. Yep.
So it's a fractured cusp that goes below the bone.
Well, a fractured cusp usually, the fractured cusp is going to they're going to come in with it flexing, or it's going to be broken off all the way. Okay, and we simply restore the tooth. The crack is an incomplete fracture, so it's a crack line that runs down the tooth, and we see those around the old amalgams and around the bruxers have those little cracks on the mesial marginal ridge and the distal marginal ridge. You see them all the time, and if those are left untreated long enough, those cracks go deeper and deeper down into the root, and then they turn into a split root, okay, or a split tooth, okay. So I describe to patients it's a crack that's just been there too long, and nobody, it went crazy. So now at that point it's no longer savable. So a split tooth, and then the fourth or the fifth kind is a vertical root fracture. Those are cracks mostly found in endodontically treated teeth that start at the end of the root and work up. So
that start at the end of the.
They typically start at the apex of the root and work their way up. Yeah. So those 5 cracks, too often we just call it a crack, and we don't communicate really well about what we're talking about. We use the term a cracked root, fractured root, kind of interchangeably, and it's important that we understand if we're talking about a split tooth or a crack that's savable, or a crazed line that doesn't really require any treatment, but we need to be aware of it and watch it, because if that crazed line turns into a crack, we need to be more aggressive about treatment, protecting the tooth.
So you mentioned the word cyclic fatigue, which draws me all the way back to Creighton in undergrad, where I forgot if it was chemistry class or physics class, where one of the lab deals, he took a plate of marbles and he put them in the oven for 350 for 10 minutes. He took them out and he dumped them in ice water, and they all shattered. And then he drained the water and said, "See, you still have all these marbles, and they're all shattered because the molecules all shifted, but none of them are broke. They're still all functional marbles." And then he drew the parallel to Creighton Dental School. He said, and I don't know if this is true or false, I'm asking an endodontist. He said that Americans have the most crazed lines that turn into cracks and fractures because our society used the most ice. We eat hot food, thermal cycle to cold, hot food, thermal cycle. And he said that when you went to Asia and Africa and Latin America, that you didn't see all these crazed lines. And he's told me, I think that was in 1980, he said, if I found a jaw in the middle of the ocean and it had crazed lines, he said, I'd be 99% sure it was from the U.S. or Canada. And if it was from Africa or Asia, it wouldn't have all these crazed lines. And I remember the first time I lectured in Portugal, Lisbon, in Portugal, I'm eating this restaurant, I order a Coke, and she just brings me a glass of hot Coke. And I said, "Oh, can I have some ice in it?" And then she came back when she had this little platter, and she put like 3 chips of ice in it. So I'm like, no. I said, "Take the glass. I want the whole glass packed with ice, and then I'm going to pour the Coke over." And she goes, "Are you from the United States of America?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And so is that true or false?
I've never heard that directly. I would assume more that the fact that in developed countries we're keeping our teeth longer, and we have better dental care, and so over time, if we keep a tooth long enough, just the wear and tear of life and stress. Maybe it's the stress levels of Americans. We probably have a lot more stress.
Yeah, and we are living longer. I mean, I read this study that for going back 50,000 years, the average age of a human was 17 and a half years. 4,000 to 2,000 years ago, it jumped up to 34 or 36, and then 2,000 to now, it's up to 74. So these teeth basically were only meant to go 17 and a half years. Yeah.
So we're asking them to do a lot, and fortunately, they do. I mean, they're amazing. I'm always amazed at the healing ability of the tooth. I've been working with an ENT a little bit, and we've been doing some cases, the crossover sinus cases.
I want to podcast that guy or try to get online. Can you hook me up with him?
Oh, sure. I was fascinated because we were talking when they go in and do their sinus surgery, they go in there and they blow through the walls of the sinuses and just tear out the bone and open up the cavity, and when they do that bone never comes back. And he was even amazed.
When they say that, what do you mean never comes back?
Well, we're so used to when we work in the mouth, when we work in the alveolar bone, we can cut that bone away and do an apico, or we can and it comes back. I'm so used to seeing bone heal around endodontically treated teeth that you forget that it might be the only place in the body where you can injure the bone so much and it will just grow right back. When they do sinus surgery, those sinus walls, they don't grow back. Once you've had a sinus surgery once, the holes that they put in the wall to open those pathways, that's like that for the rest of your life.
So who's your sinus buddy? He's an ENT.
He's an ENT. His name's Tim Hagen. He's with Arizona Sinus Center, and his partner is Ryan Reel. And these two guys are amazing. They're rhinologists. So that means they're ENTs who have done additional specialty training just in sinus. There's only 3 rhinologists in the Phoenix area, and these 2 practice together.
Ryan Reel and Tim
Hagen.
Hagen,
yeah.
And what's their website?
It's Arizona Sinus Center. You'll have to Google that.
And why are you working with rhinologists?
We just happen to
Are they
have,
rhinologists or
yeah.
ENT?
Well, they're ENTs, but they're specialists. So they're kind of like
And their website, Arizona Rhinologist?
no, Arizona Sinus Center. So they go through their ENT residency and then they do additional fellowship just in sinus, right? So one of the things that they'll use is endoscopes. And when you go, most ENTs, if you go in for an exam, they don't typically use an endoscope. So much like an endodontist would use a microscope to do a root canal, a rhinologist like Dr. Hagen and Dr. Reel, they'll use endoscopes and they'll go in and they'll visualize your sinuses and then recommend treatment based on that. So the way we got hooked up is, as I just had a patient that was getting ready to have sinus surgery with Dr. Reel like the next week, and I'm doing my exam and I'm taking some CTs and I'm looking at it going, this is an odontogenic sinusitis. This is the tooth causing this sinus abscess. So I put together some information and just started to communicate with them, and I kind of laugh about this, but they're the first physicians to ever respond to any communication that I've sent. So we began to work together, and it's been
And you know why that is? Same reason you could sell your practice because it's a business that has value. You can sell a vet office, a dental office, a chiropractor. You can't sell a medical practice. They don't sell them because with Medicaid and Medicare, having a gazillion patients is everyone has a gazillion. Anybody can set up and have a gazillion patients. So there's no value in a medical office, and that should be your first red flag. There's something wrong with the medical insurance industry when you can't even sell the damn business. And so they're so flooded with patients, and their margins are so low that they can't spend the time talking to referrals, doing everything that we do in dentistry. We actually treat our dogs better. A veterinary office treats their dogs better than a Medicaid practice. And it's kind of, America should tiptoe slowly into Obamacare because if everybody will have access, but everybody will have access to IKEA. They're not, you know what I mean? And there's trade-offs to everything.
Sure.
But what other, so since then, have you ever done any other cases with these rhinologists? Because you had them speak.
Yeah, Dr. Hagen actually came and spoke at the Arizona Endodontic Association recently. With the cone beam, that's one of the things that we're seeing. It used to be that patients would ask, well, could this be causing my sinus problem? And I'd say, well, maybe, But with the cone beam, we can take a scan and you can literally see changes in the floor of the sinus, and you can see perforations in the floor of the sinus and reactions of the sinus. So we're now able to diagnose an odontogenic sinusitis and tell patients, absolutely, this tooth is causing your chronic sinus issues. I mean, we have patients that come in here, sometimes they say, oh, I've had sinus surgery, I've been to, doctor after doctor after, and this problem keeps coming back. We take a scan and it's a dental abscess.
And could a dental abscess on a tooth on the right would it just make your sinus on the right be blocked, or could it make them all?
No, what happens is it can affect one sinus, and then as that sinus backs up, that can then move, and affect the other sinuses. But typically, it's going to affect the side that the sinus is on. So I've worked with these two doctors, and it's been fascinating because I've been into their office and observed what they do. And
where are they at?
They're in Phoenix.
Downtown?
Right off 7th Street, I think.
By St. Joe?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not as familiar with that. It's right off the freeway. I know it's right when if you're going to the Suns game, you turn right instead of left to get to the stadium. So it's right down there. So we've worked on a lot of cases together. It's been fun. They send patients over here that have been bouncing around from doctor to doctor, sometimes even ENT to ENT, until they finally find somebody who reads it.
And what's the difference between a rhinologist and an ENT?
And a rhinologist is an ENT who has done a fellowship in sinus treatment. So
very interesting. So what do you're talking to thousands of dentists? What do these people need to know about those 5 different guys? I mean, how does this go from knowledge to clinical? A crazed line to a crack to a fractured cusp to a split tooth on a vertical root fracture.
Well, this information, I think,
more about terminology.
It's terminology, but it's also really important for treatment planning. As you talk to your patients and you get out your intraoral camera you want to show them the things that you're seeing in their mouth. I mean, when they see what you're seeing, they're going to accept treatment. They're going to want to have treatment. When you show them a craze line, you can tell them, look, if this gets worse, it can turn into a crack, and then we're going to need to do something. And then you can take your camera over to the other side of the mouth and say, look, this is already a crack. You've got a crack on the mesial marginal ridge. We're going to test it. It's still alive. If we put a crown on it now, you may not need a root canal. I like to tell patients when there's a study that says that if you have a vital, healthy pulp and the tooth has a crack in it, if you cover the tooth with a crown, 80% of the time they won't need a root canal, right? So that means 20% of the time they still will. But if you have patients in your practices now and they have cracks in their teeth, but those teeth are vital, if you cover them now, there's an 80% chance you'll save them from having to have a root canal. So right there is a little gem to help you treatment plan, your crowns.
I'm gonna go through some diagnosing and treatment plan common questions I see on Dental Town. Okay. Again, all the data I have from feedback on these podcasts is everyone that ever sends back, they're usually 30 and under, been out of school 5. I think I've had like 2 emails that were, over 30. So that's all I'm getting.
Yeah.
A very common question.
Well, let me check before you ask me about the blog. I've been doing the blog since 2007. I guess how many posts I've gotten Ed to do.
How many? 0?
Yeah,
0.
That goes right along. There's definitely a demographic of dentists who are going to participate.
I feel so
online.
sorry for Ed because he's another short, fat, bald guy. One time he was at a dental convention and some guy came up and hugged him and kissed him on the back of the head because he thought it was. And poor Ed, man, he has to wear a sign that I'm not Howard.
No, but I know that a lot of the younger dentists are the ones that are going to be on there, and
So one of the common questions they have is, and I hear this a lot, they know the toothache is on the lower right, but they just can't tell which one. Do you have any helpful ideas on, obviously when they come in, they're like, oh my God. And then they're sitting there and they're looking at the x-rays. They don't see a periapical release and everything they touch explodes. What do you do when you just don't know which one it is?
Well, most of the time when I see patients that come in, I'll take them through just my regular diagnostics of palpation of the gingival tissues, of the buccal vestibule, percussion, probing, thermal testing. If thermal testing isn't giving us the right enough information or is not working, we'll go to EPT testing, electric pulp testing, radiographic exam, and then sometimes we'll use the cone beam. So we use all of those, and if with all of those I can't put my finger on the cause of the pain, and we've ruled out the non-tooth sources like TMJ, muscle referral patterns, neuralgia, sinus issues. If we don't think it's any of those, and I truly think it's a tooth and it's one of these teeth is going south, I tell the patient, let's give it just a little time. And I know it's gonna suck for a couple of days, but it's better to give it a little time and let those symptoms localize a little bit more. So I might just give them some medication, say, come back in 2 days, and we're going to retest. And in 2 days later, we're going to go through the same battery of tests, and we're going to see one start to stand out. Okay, now number 19 is a little more sensitive today.
Would you give her pain meds or pain meds and antibiotics?
Well, if there's a necrotic tooth, then they're going to get antibiotics. If there's no sign of necrosis, then I don't necessarily always give. If the patient's symptoms are, I've got terrible temperature pain, and we think it's an irreversible pulpitis, then we may just manage it with pain medication. I don't throw antibiotics at everything. Sometimes I want to give it just a little time and say, let's let this tooth show us who it is, show us which one it is. So.
Next question is, I know there's no way to answer it. I know it's a case-by-case deal, but sometimes they're sitting there and the tooth's broken down. It would need a root canal, a build-up, a crown. Sometimes you're looking at this and they're thinking, should I do a root canal, build-up, crown, or just extract this thing and just put in a clean implant? How do you get your hands around? Are teeth just interchangeable with titanium implants?
Well, the way that first of all, our treatment here in our practice has always been on what would you do on yourself and your family.
So you'd shoot the patient.
And if you can get a margin on the tooth and can get a ferrule, then I try to save the tooth. I think a natural tooth is always better than an implant. First of all, because you can always take the implant option down the road if you have to. But what I see, sometimes people say, well, let's take the tooth out and let's put an implant in there. They're interchangeable. They're the same, and an implant lasts forever and it can't get a cavity. And when you realize that argument, when you think about that argument, an implant certainly doesn't get a cavity, but the bacteria that cause the cavities and the periodontal disease are still there. So you can get periimplantitis. And the thing that I try to explain to patients is implants don't feel the same way as a tooth feels. An implant feels different because there's no periodontal ligament. An implant doesn't always look like a natural tooth does, unless it's adjacent to a natural tooth. Right? So when you do these front central implants, the ideal situation is in between two natural teeth. That's because the two natural teeth next door are going to make that implant look like a real tooth. If you put two implants next to each other, doesn't look, the gingival architecture changes. And one of the interesting things to think about, and if you go back to your embryology back in the day, if you remember, all tissues form from the ectoderm, the endoderm, and the mesoderm.
Oh man, we're going all the way back.
I know. I had to go back. I had to go back and pull this out to look at this.
So say it again. So you're talking about an embryo,
yeah,
or an embryo or a fetus,
well, the embryo forms three layers: the mesoderm, the ectoderm, and the endoderm. And from those three layers, all tissues of our body are formed. Okay, and the ectoderm is where the enamel and the tooth comes from, the ectoderm. The alveolar bone of our jaw comes from the mesoderm. Okay?
The alveolar bone.
The alveolar bone it comes from the mesoderm. Okay? They come from two different embryonic tissues. So sometimes people say, well, I'm going to pull out the tooth.
And then
and the tooth, the ligament, the bundle bone are all of ectodermal origin.
Tooth, ligament, and what?
The tooth, the ligament, the bundle bone, the periodontium itself.
Bundle bone. You have to review that one.
Well, the periodontium, right? The periodontium comes from that same embryonic tissue. So you take that out with a tooth, and then you stick an implant back into the alveolar bone, and you want it to look like a natural tooth. But it doesn't. The bone doesn't grow up the same way. You don't get the same gingival architecture, and you slowly.
So there's really something called bundle bone.
There is. That's what the PDL attaches into.
The PDL attaches into bundle bone, which then turns into alveolar bone.
Well, the bundle bone is the PDL attaches to the root and to the bundle bone. That's what the ligament attaches to.
So you're saying
so
I
when
graduated
you take
dental
out the
school
tooth,
before they had discovered bundle bone?
I guess my point is when you take the tooth out,
yeah,
that tissue is gone, and it's gone forever. That ectodermal derived tissue, the periodontium, is gone. It's gone forever. So you put an implant in there. It's going into the mesodermal bone, mesodermally derived bone. So that's why teeth and implants aren't the same, and it drives me nuts when I hear people say, they're interchangeable. It's a tooth, it's an implant, they're the same, or the implant's better. I mean, I'm an endodontist, so I'm biased, but I mean, I think the natural tooth
it's bizarre that
should be saved as much as
that
possible.
The tooth, the ligament, the bundle bone came from ectoderm, the alveolar bone came from mesoderm, and you're an endodontist, and the endoderm.
Yeah, you'd think.
You'd think the whole damn thing came out of the endoderm if you're an endodontist, wouldn't you? Do you feel bad that you're the only thing that starts with endo?
Yeah, I feel shorted.
There's nothing teeth related. And all those studies are biased because they're always doing studies on teeth that were lost from decay, streptococcus mutans, in alveolar, in mandibular anterior bone. They never do implant studies of people who lost their teeth from gum disease in the back of the maxilla. And then they come out with their cherry-picked data and say, oh, yeah, implants have a 95% success rate. Yeah, if it was a meth patient in Apache Junction that, lost all her teeth from meth, and you put 4 implants down here. But let's talk about the millions
Real
of people,
people.
real people that have periodontal disease,
Yeah.
and that's interesting.
And
So,
that's across the board, though. Not to pick
Yeah.
on the implant research, because the endodontic research can be just as bad. But the reality is real teeth. I think there's nothing that can replace a real
It-
tooth as good as
it
the
is
tooth
kind of
itself.
funny when some of these dentists talk about evidence-based dentistry. They're always talking about research. And then yesterday, Carl Mish was talking about, that all the stuff he's done, no one's ever asked for the data. And then another good friend of mine, who's a dentist who owns a company, just gives me the list of all these people where if he just give them $5,000, they'll take his product and do a study that will, that will show how great it is. So I mean, so you, with everything you have to be moderate. You gotta balance clinical experience. What are your peers saying? Whatever. You're also into pulpal regeneration.
That's right.
What the hell is pulpal regeneration?
Well,
are you talking? So is your nickname the Dical Man?
yeah. No, Dical is a thing of the past. Pulpal regeneration is it's a new procedure in endodontics where we take an immature tooth and we that has become necrotic. These are young patients, 9, 10 years old. They had an accident, knocked a tooth, and the tooth became necrotic.
Knock the tooth out, avulsed?
It can be avulsed or just a traumatized tooth that was traumatized prior to the final formation of the root. Right, so it's an immature open apex. In dental school we used to learn apexification and apexogenesis, use calcium hydroxide. Well, now what we're doing is we're actually trying to get the tooth to come back to life and regenerate the pulpal tissue and start the development of the root again. It's fascinating.
You could do that even
It's
if the
fascinating.
tooth was locked out?
Yes, it's fascinating.
Because I figured it was like Superman breaking his neck. If
No,
the tooth come out, you broke
You
the
would
nerve
not believe it. And
wouldn't heal.
the more I've done this and vital pulp therapy, the more I've realized how the healing ability of the pulp is better than we give it credit for. And so we'll see a tooth that has become necrotic, it's draining, and we'll go in and we'll clean it out. And the way the pulp regeneration works is you access the tooth, you debride it with minimal instrumentation. You don't want to remove any more tooth structure than you have to. You're irrigating.
Even if it was necrotic.
Even if it's necrotic, yes. Irrigating with sodium hypochlorite. Then you do an EDTA rinse, and then you initiate a blood clot. So you've got this open apex. You take a file, you go down and you pierce the periapex, and you get it to start to bleed back into the canal again. Then we close it off with a special filling coronally. We used to use MTA. Now we're using more bioceramics. Okay, and then you restore the tooth from above, right? So then what happens is that blood clot that comes in either brings in stem cells or stem cells that are left inside. What we'll see happen a good percentage of the time is that tooth will come back to life. The abscess will disappear and the root will literally start to grow again. We'll see dentin forming back in the root again.
Is there an age limit to this? I mean, could you do it on me, a 53-year-old, if I had a necrotic tooth?
That's not ever been done. I mean, normally the apex is supposed to be at least a millimeter open, is what the current guidelines are.
And that's called apex.
No, it's called pulpal regeneration.
But and what were the other two things you said?
Apexification is what we used to do when you'd put calcium hydroxide in the immature root over and over and over until a little calcific barrier would form at the end of the root. And then you could then fill it with gutta percha. But the problem with the apexification is the root is still as weak as it ever was. You get a little barrier against which you can pack your gutta percha, but the root walls never get any thicker. With pulpal regeneration, the root literally comes back to life and starts growing again. The root gets thicker and gets longer, and so
The
it's
human body's amazing.
It's a really a neat.
I always think it's weird where someone comes in with a P core, they're all swollen. You take out this wisdom tooth. When they're done, there's like a ping pong ball hole back there, and they come in 10 days later, and it's just all pink, all pretty, and you're just like, well, we didn't do anything. We just pop the tooth, the human body just takes over, and I mean it's really amazing.
It is. It is. It's a fascinating, it's exciting part of endodontic practice.
So you said some MTA. Okay, explain what MTA is. That's that
mineral
that's,
trioxide aggregate,
and that was that was an endodontist who basically it was
Yep.
Pool. What was it? Pool.
his name was Mahmoud Torabinejad that developed it out of Loma Linda.
Yeah, and it was I
think
pool repair stuff. Wasn't
I
it?
think
What was
the story that I heard.
Porter cement.
It's like Portland cement. It's like
Portland
a medical
cement.
grade Portland cement, essentially.
Are you
And,
friends with him?
no, I just know him from.
I've been trying to podcast that guy because he was the inventor of that.
Yeah.
But you said you used to use that, and the complaint about that was that it worked really good, but it was very expensive.
That wasn't the biggest complaint. The biggest complaint was sometimes you can get some discoloration of the tooth with the MTA. So that's the reason. And if you put that in an anterior tooth, you get some.
Say when you use it, like a apicoectomy, or is it more for perfs or
Oh, we use it for any type of root repair.
root repair?
Apicoectomy, root perforation, and we began using it for pulpal regeneration as well. But in the
But color
anterior areas,
discoloration.
sometimes you get a little discoloration.
Okay, so color discoloration was the main thing. But you said you kind of switched from Portland cement to bioceramics.
Yes. So we're using some of those now for this type of treatment.
And what are brand names? Why are you using bioceramics?
Like Endo Sequence is one brand. Gosh, I can't remember all the brands. That's the one that I use, I think, most of the time.
Endo sequence.
Yeah, I think that's made by Ultradent, perhaps.
Dan Fisher, my buddy. Have you ever met Dan?
I haven't.
He's probably one of the most amazing men that ever walked into dentistry. So I've been trying to get you to get a cracked tooth course on Dental Town.
Yes, it's coming. It's coming.
It's coming?
Yes, it's coming.
Now
it's official. It's online. It's coming.
It's official. It's online. What does that mean?
Well, I've just told everybody online.
Oh,
it's gonna happen,
okay. You
so-
told everybody on the
all right,
podcast.
It's coming.
Yeah, I would love to do that. I mean, you're an amazing guy. Also, my God, you could write so many papers just out of your endo blog. I mean, and you're.
Well, I don't know about that.
How
but
many
we
cases
enjoyed
have you
it.
have? Did you say you had on there?
I think there's a couple hundred posts.
Couple hundred,
50
yeah.
maybe.
And each post is a case.
Some of them are cases. Yeah, most of them are cases. The busier I get, the harder it is for me to.
I only got you
I
for
look
3
to
more
share.
minutes. I want to ask you 2 important questions. You know, we talk about the standard of care. You know, we got to do endo as good as the endodontist. I mean, we can't be in there flipping Sargenti or things that are unacceptable. Is a CBCT before doing a root canal and or a microscope to see better as opposed to just loops? Is that kind of getting to be the standard of care? How often? So let me ask you more specifically. What percent of your root canals are you using a CBCT? What percent are you using a microscope? And what would you think if some guy says, "Oh yeah, I do all my molar endo," but he never uses a CBCT and he never uses a microscope?
That's a great question. For
Thank you. You're the first podcast person ever said that. Took 300 podcasts for one of my
That's
guests.
a great one. So for microscopes, we use on 100% of our cases.
And what magnification is that about?
Well, our scopes go from 5 up to I think 20.
And what do you
20 power.
And the 80/20
Most
rule,
of the
what do you-
time, I'm at about 8 power.
About 8.
6 to 8 power. So, and I put we have a scope in every operatory. Every root canal is done with a scope.
is it mounted on the ceiling?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you prefer that? And is it the which scope are you going
We use
with?
the global.
St. Louis. You like that one?
It's the one I trained with, but
Yeah.
I like the Zeiss scope too. They do a
Yeah.
great scope. So every case is under a microscope. Cases that we use cone beams on are retreatments, surgeries. Not every case. And one of the things it's because the cone beam takes a lot of time too. Takes time to takes time to read. So I don't take it just to generate fees. That's not why you get a cone beam. You get a cone beam for the information it gives you. And so if I have a severely calcified tooth, I might take a cone beam. If I'm going into retreat, I'll take a cone beam to see what can I improve as I go in to do this, or where's the canal that they missed. Or if I'm in a tooth, if I've started a root canal and I can't find a canal, this is what's really amazing is I'll stop and I'll say, okay, look, we're done for today. We're going to take a cone beam on the way out the door. And I'll use that cone beam to map the canal system. And so when that patient comes back in within minutes, having the map, I'm able to get in and find that canal. So that's how I use it most of the time.
So did you just say that you mostly only use a CBCT on retreats?
Retreats, surgeries, and difficult non-surgical, difficult initial treatment. I don't take it routinely.
And what do you mean by surgery? Apicoectomies?
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, because in your lifetime as an endodontist, the Delta covers 33% or 33 million people. So basically 1 in 10 Americans have Delta. And it seems like the insurance billing information is showing that apicoectomies have been trending down your entire career.
Sure.
Why do you think that is?
Well, because of the advent of the implant. I mean, that is becoming a good way to replace the tooth. And I think, frankly, there are too many teeth that are given up on too soon. I like to be the one to tell the patient, look, you really ought to take this tooth out. And I tell the patients that all the time. I refer a lot of patients to have implants when I see that the tooth is no longer savable.
And what is usually that tooth looking at? I mean,
well, it's a tooth it's got severe periodontal disease, or it's got a crack or a fracture that makes the endodontic prognosis poor. And when the endodontic prognosis is poor, that's when it's time to invest your money into something with a better prognosis. If you take a single tooth and a single implant side by side, the prognosis is almost identical. So, but when you start adding, all right, now this tooth has a crack in it, it's been retreated, there's perforation in the tooth, all of those things then decrease that prognosis. So I like to just give patients the choice and say, look, you can do this treatment, but I think your money might be better spent taking that tooth out. I had one this morning. It was a patient that had a root canal, and I opened it up and I found a crack. With the microscope, I could see it going right down the distal wall of this number 18 molar, and it went at least 3 millimeters below the CEJ. So I told the patient, we can do this, but it's going to fail again. You're better off taking this out, getting another implant.
Yeah, I was gonna think that maybe CBCTs would be more important, because isn't it safe to say? By the way, we're in overtime. Wouldn't it be safe to say that the number one cause of a failed root canal is missed canals? Is that a fair statement? True or false?
Probably. I mean, it's a high percentage. On most upper molars that we do retreatments on, we find missed canals.
And just real quick, go through. You gave me 1 to 5 on cracks. Give me 1 to 5 on the missed canals. Most likely missed canal. Is it an MB2 on a X-ray?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Is that the 80-20 rule?
Yeah, probably.
And then what would be the second? I'm guessing the second canal on the distal canal of a molar.
Yep. The lower molars have that fourth canal about 30% of the time.
Okay.
So, so that's going to be probably the next most likely. And then the bicuspids. The bicuspids have the varying anatomy. They can have 1 canal or 2 canals, and so it's important that you make sure you hit all those. And then the anterior, the mandibular anterior teeth, I think they can have a second canal about 10% of the time. So, and that's usually, you're going to miss the lingual canal if you miss it. If there's 2, it's going to be the lingual canal that you miss, because of the access is coming from the lingual. You always will find the buccal first. So,
well, that was a fast hour. We're at hour 3. I just want to tell you seriously, dude, I think you're a legend. Congratulations on getting 1 million views on the endoblog.com.
Oh, thank you.
And good luck. Go to gradeyourdentist.com and also
and you got to be patient there, because we're in the very early stages. So if you're interested, if anybody's interested, you just go sign up, and we'll get some information.
And if you sign up today and tell him you heard on this podcast, he'll give you a free root canal. You just come in here, point to a tooth, free endo.
Right.
Hey, seriously, dude, thanks you
a
so
lot.
much for an hour of your time today.
Appreciate everything that you've done for our dental community, and what your media organization has brought dentists together from all over the world, and you're doing a great work. And I have to say, I really admire the efforts that you make to educate the rest of the world that doesn't have the benefit of the educations that we have here in the Western world. So I think that's a great mission, and I look up to you for that.
It is the coolest thing in the world when you walk into a dental school in Asia and the dean starts crying because her entire curriculum is those online C courses, which we make for free, which you're going to add a cracked tooth course on.
That's right.
So when
It's
they go to
coming.
dental
It's
school in
coming.
Kathmandu and Ethiopia and Tanzania and all of Shenzhen, I swear to God that this is their whole dental school curriculum, and all their books are 20 years old, and more times than not, in a different language, like Mandarin Chinese or French, and they're all like, well, we're all from Tanzania. And we're all from Ethiopia, but they're on Dental Town. And then Google Chrome, you can Google Chrome translates to, I think 68 or 80 different languages. So when you put that cracked tooth course in,
All right.
there'll be little kids in Ethiopia who are 22 years old whose entire family is paying for this little girl to go to dental school, and she'll be listening to Jason in sunny Mesa, Arizona. All right, buddy. Thanks for
All
your
right.
time.
Thanks, Howard.
All right. Take care.